Hi guys, it's Marc Zicree, Mr. Sci-fi, also known as Marc Zicree of Space Command, and I'm here to talk about great TV shows, good TV shows, bad TV shows, everything across the board, and also a terrific pilot that I just saw that I want to recommend that you watch as well. So lately, basically, I've been catching up on some science fiction TV shows I hadn't had a chance to watch before, including Defying Gravity, which is written by and produced by James Perriott. And I worked with him on Forever Night. I wrote an episode of that show a few years ago, and he's a very talented man. And Defying Gravity deals with a group of astronauts on a mission around the solar system. It only ran 13 episodes, and it was sort of very influenced by Lost. So it has flashbacks to the astronauts' lives 5 years earlier when they were in training. And for me, there's too much of that and too little of the mission. But it's still a very entertaining show with a very, very good cast, and I really enjoyed it. I watched all 13 episodes. It was made back in 2009. And, I've been catching up on Ascension and Extant, and, Ascension, I just don't buy the premise, and so that kind of leaves me a bit cold, and I think there's like a lot of gratuitous nudity and things like that, and just, it's not my cup of tea. And Extant had a really good premise, and I like Halle Berry, but again, it goes totally off the rails as it goes on, and just kind of loses itself, and is basically not keeping true to its characters, and it's just going hither and yon for shock value. So I think it's an opportunity lost, but there's a terrific pilot I just saw, and I want to recommend it to you. It's by Frank Spotnitz, who did The X-Files, and it's an adaptation of one of my favorite books. In the early 60s, I think 1962, Philip K. Dick wrote a novel called The Man in the High Castle, and it dealt with a world in which the Axis powers, the Nazis and the Japanese, won World War II, and the eastern half of the United States is ruled by the Nazis, and the western half is ruled by Japan, and it's a phenomenal novel. It won the Hugo for best novel that year, the top award in science fiction, and Ridley Scott acquired it, and Frank Spotnitz has just done the pilot for Amazon and Amazon.com, and you can watch it and you can vote on it, and I think you might have to be an Amazon Prime member, but it's just a spectacular pilot. It's wonderfully done. I immediately sent Frank Spotnitz a message congratulating him, and he emailed me back and was very kind and grateful and graceful in his response. So it's really lovely to see that level of work being done. And the funny part is that I'm a huge nut for stories about the Nazis winning World War II. First of all, I wouldn't be here. There'd be no Mr. Sci-Fi channel and no Mr. Sci-Fi if the Nazis had won. And so I've followed these kind of stories over the years, and there's a wonderful 3-part miniseries that was made in the 1970s on the BBC called An Englishman's Castle. It stars Kenneth More, who also starred in A Night to Remember, a great film about the sinking of the Titanic. And it's about a man who's writing a soap opera about World War II in a Nazi-occupied England many decades later, and it's just a wonderful piece of work. There was also a great pseudo-documentary called It Happened Here about the Nazis invading England, and that was done by Kevin Brownlow, who later did a documentary series on silent films called The Parade's Gone By that James Mason narrated. And that pseudo-documentary took Kevin Brownlow 8 years to make, and so you can actually see the actors aging between shots, and it was done in black and white. And I met Kevin Brownlow at Ray Bradbury's house, and he told me about the trials and tribulations of making that piece, and he used real Nazis in it, in some cases Germans from World War II. It was made in the early 60s, and also one genuine British Nazi who espouses his viewpoints, and it's quite chilling, but a wonderful piece of work. And Kevin Brownlow wrote a book called it's called How It Happened Here, which is about the making of that film, and it's quite an entertaining piece of work. I recommend it. And of course there's another book called Fatherland about the Nazis winning World War II, and President Kennedy is President Joe Kennedy, who is Jack Kennedy's father, and he was a Nazi sympathizer, or at least had leanings that way. And the book is very good, and there's a miniseries made of it starring Rutger Hauer that's not as engaging, not as well done, but there's a very good BBC radio adaptation starring Anton Lesser that I recommend. And Len Deighton wrote a novel called SSGB, which is again about the Nazis in Great Britain, and And so there's a handful of these things. There's a book on how, how Hitler might have won the war that I've been reading, which is fascinating as well. So you can find these stories. But again, if you haven't seen The Man in the High Castle, I urge you to check it out, and I think you'll be really well rewarded. I hope it goes to series. The viewers can vote on which pilots they want to see go to series, and I would recommend that one. And in terms of greatest TV show ever, I think for my vote that would be Twilight Zone. No surprise there, but I think it's not just the greatest show ever for its content, but for the influence it had on television. So many showrunners, that's their favorite show, and they grew up wanting to make TV because of what Rod had done. And he was really the first showrunner where the writer ran the show. And second runner-up might be The Wire, because David, David basically came up with a great idea of showing us how politics work, how the cops work, how the drug dealers work, how the newspapers work, how schools work, just basically taking apart a city, in this case Baltimore, and it's just an astonishing piece of work, and it really looks at the real world rather than TV just being influenced by other TV shows. So if you haven't seen The Wire, I recommend that you watch it. So that's about it for now. So if you have comments, want to subscribe, spread the word, do all the things you do, that's much appreciated. We'll talk to you really soon, but I'm really glad that I got to see what hopefully will be the beginning of a terrific television show. And that's it until next time. And if you haven't read The Man in the High Castle, I urge you to check it out. It's well worth the time. It's one of Philip K. Dick's best. And as you know, he also did Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was the inspiration for Blade Runner, again one of my favorite films. So that's it for now. Talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye.